Uh, Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mark Sussman, the editor of Willamette Week. Thrilled to be here with Dr. Steve Kassakian, who you're going to have to tell me your title because you do a number of things, but we're here talking to you because you basically are head of, is it informatics at OHSU?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me, Mark. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you and the audience. So my title is, I'm the Associate Chief Health Information Officer at OHSU. So I'm not in charge of everything. I'm somewhere in the pecking order like everybody else.
So
I'm also
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm also an assistant professor in biomedical informatics, and then probably most importantly, I'm also a primary care doctor at OHSU in internal medicine.
All right, so we're going to dumb this down for me and the other lay people.
Yeah.
You're a physician who's an internist, but then you went back to school to get a degree in informatics, right?
Exactly.
Because you hadn't spent enough time in higher education.
Something like that, yeah.
All right, so you're at OHSU, you're poking along, trying to, I assume, be an evangelist for the idea of treating patients using phone or computer or Zoom conference or whatever. And my guess is you're probably finding some resistance internally as you would in any large organization. And then all of a sudden a public health crisis comes along and boom, all of a sudden you're in a growth business.
Yeah, something similar to that. So, my job is pretty widespread. I'm responsible for kind of helping clinically anything that needs kind of IT resources and how we take care of patients. And myself, along with several others, we've had a telemedicine program at OHSU, like many places, for quite some time. But I think in totality, people dabbled in it, right? It was something a few providers here did. It was something a few providers there did, but there never was really a real strong interest across the community. And then also patients weren't that convinced that it was helpful or available. And so, we used to be in a business of really trying to convince people of the value of to use it. And it very much switched to, we had people beating down the doors, just trying to get them all set up to be able to see their patients over video and telephone once COVID-19 started.
So give us some sense of the scale, how many exams, visits, or how do you measure your growth?
Yeah, so when you think of telemedicine, that's kind of the big title, and there's a number of different kind of what I'll call delivery modalities under that. I think probably the ones that people are most interested in are probably the video visits, and most of what I'm going to talk about is kind of ambulatory care. We do have offerings in inpatient as well, but the ambulatory stuff's really gone through the roof. So in the month of January of this year, we did about 300 visits over video the entire month. And then in the month of April,
300 in the month of
January.
Okay.
300 in the month of January this year. And then in the month of April, we did over 16,000.
What I gather is, although this public health crisis has almost necessitated telemedicine because people can't leave their homes or they're fearful or whatever, you can understand that it's necessitated it. But in addition, as I gather, it actually works a lot of the time, that you can actually diagnose my whatever in many cases, not by having me sitting in your office, but by having this sort of a meeting.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, people always think of medicine as filled with diagnostic mystery. And while diagnosis is an important part of medicine, a lot of care that happens is about disease follow-up, right? And chronic care management, especially in the field that I'm in primary care. So a lot of times we're not necessarily discussing, a new complaint per se. We're following up on your diabetes, your hypertension, depression, anxiety. And those are things that are really amenable to things like telemedicine. And so,
isn't it, I think I read somewhere that in medical school, you're taught that the vast majority of what you do is based on what someone's medical history is, and that a physical exam is at most maybe 10 or 20% of the data you're going to plug into your diagnosis.
Yeah, so it's probably someone's cliche that's got some old professor's name. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, about 90% of the diagnosis you get in the history anyway. And so a lot of times, you're able to make a lot of diagnoses based on that, but you also can perform a lot of the physical exam through video if you need that. There's certainly the ability to sort of ask a patient, okay, I want you to push there and tell me if that hurts, or, kind of do some maneuvers and things. Certainly has its limitations, and I think we'll get to understand those more now that it's become such a huge part of the way we deliver care. I mean, it's certainly not, you can't provide emergency care for folks if someone's having, a heart attack or something. It's definitely not the modality, but for many things, it's really able to get most of what's needed. And the big benefit of it is, let's be honest, going to the doctor is a hassle, right? People usually come to see me and it's not a great experience, not because I'm a bad guy, but because the whole, the parking, they're late, maybe the office is running behind, maybe I'm late. But now it's, they're sitting in their house and they get to see me and we get to connect on whatever issues and help them out. And it's pretty convenient.
Steve, this is really fascinating. I'm going to ask you a somewhat controversial question to drag you into politics a little bit, but
okay.
And actually I want to answer my question and then have you respond to it. So the question is, the technology has been available for some time. This makes so much sense. It has to create efficiencies, which should drive the cost of healthcare down a little bit. It's sort of like, duh. And it's sort of like, why hasn't this been done a whole lot sooner? So I'd like an answer, but I want to, in part, to spice this up a little bit. I asked a good friend of mine who does telemedicine for a different healthcare system in a different market. And I said, why did this take a public health crisis? I said, is it because of consumer reluctance? And he said, no, it's because traditionally hospitals and doctors get paid when they see me in person. That insurance companies have been very reluctant to compensate for you calling me up on the phone or giving me advice. And it is only because of a shift there that all of a sudden telemedicine is going to move forward. So
that is correct. So generally what happens is, Medicare sort of sets the stage for what other people follow. And so Medicare has, during this time period, brought the telemedicine reimbursements up to parity with office-based visits.
And is that going to carry through moving forward, or will that change after the public health crisis?
I mean, that's probably a question for the HHS secretary, or maybe probably the CMS administrator. I think they have had some, people have asked them that in the comments back. I think that Administrator Varma said that was probably most, foreshadowing it, which she said, the genie's out of the bottle. And so we're going to have to sort of see how that unfolds. So